In this video, I'm going to explain how I went from never being athletic to stringing muscle-ups and snatching over body weight within my first year of starting CrossFit. Now, CrossFit is tough and there's a lot going on, but getting better at CrossFit can be simple if you understand that there's really only these 4 different modes or gears that you would need to use when doing your training. Hey, my name's Monroe, and for the last 13 years, I have been training, coaching, running a gym, and making it my mission to teach millions of people how to get fitter and stronger than they ever thought possible. And in this video, I'll teach you the 4 different gears that you need to use in your training to get the best results, and how to know, based on what the workout is, which gear you should choose and when. All of these gears are equally as important, but you will not spend an equal amount of time in each. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you, based on where you're at, how much time you should be spending in each one of these gears. The first gear is going to be recovery. Now, this is something I've tried to convince my parents of for years, is that you can do CrossFit at a walking pace. They say there's magic in the movements. Well, if you don't do the movements, then there's no magic. You don't have to do your workout at full intensity every time you go to the gym. I know it's hard, and there's people around you that are pushing you and motivating you and cheering you and telling you to go faster, but that's not always the right thing to do. Sometimes the right thing for your body to do is to go to the gym and move really slow and steady and controlled. You can think about it like Zone 2 CrossFit. And if you can get this right, then your time at the gym will be restorative instead of draining. Recovery is also cool down, stretching, and mobility time. If you're only stretching to increase your range of motion just before you do a workout, then you're leaving a lot on the table. If you can do stretching and mobility outside of your workouts, it'll start to cue your body and brain that, hey, we need to open up these positions, not just for our workouts and our effort, but like for our daily life. Honestly, doing the movements right and being efficient is the real secret to getting better at CrossFit. If you could take the strength you have now and the conditioning you have now, and all you did was work on your technique to get into better positions, then moving faster, heavier weights, and doing higher skill stuff becomes easy. And that's exactly what I help people with on Technique Team. If you aren't at RX yet, or maybe you're just getting started with CrossFit, Technique Team is the perfect companion tool to what you're doing with your training in the gym. Personal video coaching directly from me. You get step-by-step plans and programs to help you fill in all these missing pieces, challenges every month to keep it fun, and a community to support you along the way. There's a link in the description below. You can check it out. The next gear, and the most important in my opinion, is practice. Practice is where you go into a workout or a skill session with the intention of deepening the connection between your brain and your body. There are 10 physical skills. 4 of them are physiological, developed through training, and 4 of them are neurological, developed through practice. They're coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. Many of the movements we do require a high degree of coordination and accuracy. And the more fatigue you add, the harder it becomes to be coordinated, balanced, accurate, and to do it repeatably. Have you ever been told you're still missing the hip? Be more patient, but you're trying? Or you just need to turn the rope faster to get a double under, but the faster you turn it, the more you seem to trip. The reason that you're struggling is not because you're not trying hard enough, it's because you're not practicing well enough. When you go to learn anything that is skill related, snatches, double unders, the violin, you're working with your brain. Your brain sends neurons through a specific pathway in your body to make sure that your muscles fire in the correct order and at the appropriate amount to do whatever movement you're asking. When you repeat a task over and over and over again, your brain will start to lay down insulation along that path so that less energy will leak. This is muscle memory, and it's the reason that someone like Steph Curry can shoot the ball, turn around, look away, and know that it went in. It's also the reason that you might struggle with the skill aspect of CrossFit. And it's not that they're not trying, it's just that there's a thick wall of insulation laid down on this incorrect pathway. So you really have to make it feel different to try and get your body to express the movement differently than it's used to. And once you do it right, you have to continue to do it right so that you can establish that new pattern as this is the only way we do it. The higher your heart rate goes, the more fatigued you get, the more tired you get, the harder it becomes for you to harness your brain to tell your muscles to do the right thing. Movements get sloppy because you're always just trying to go against the clock, and then you've done 1,000 really crappy snatches and you wonder why you can't hit a new PR. You need to be spending a majority of your time in workouts practicing and holding paces that allow you to maintain good technique. I'm not saying just slow down, you need to go hard, but the right way to do CrossFit is to go really, really hard and fast, but move really, really well, which leads me to my next part, which is training. Now, the bulk of your time will be spent in this training gear. Training is the day in, day out work. This is your strength stuff, your endurance pieces, just your regular everyday metcons. You're not hyper focused on the movement. You're not hyper focused on going really slow. And you're also not trying to just like kill yourself. We're just chunking along and doing the training. A good rule of thumb for pacing and training for most CrossFit workouts is to take the first 85% of the workout at about 85%. And then in the last 15%, you can burn it all up. This is a speed where you should be able to feel the edges of your ability to hold good technique, but not so fast where the wheels just fall off. Most people make the mistake of only thinking about CrossFit as training, and they just think that, there's a point where they just need to do more CrossFit workouts to get better. And that works for a while until it doesn't. If you don't move well, you will hit a technical ceiling for where no amount of strength or conditioning will get you past poor snatch technique or poor gymnastic skill. Also, just because something takes a great deal of skill to complete doesn't mean that it needs to only be done in practice time. Remember, these are just gears that you switch into. They're not movement specific. Just understand that if you're not proficient with some of these skills, you're not going to get the same training effect from the workout. For example, if a workout has 50 double unders and you don't have double unders, it can be annoying because you're just spending the workout trying to get double unders. But if you do 100 unbroken, then you can treat that 50 in the workout like it's a kind of a moderate jog and then move on to the next piece. If there's movements in your training that you need to work on, slow down during that part of the workout and really focus on the movement. If you don't have a pull-up, don't just slop through your banded pull-ups or your ring rows because you're just trying to get through it and this isn't practice time or when I'm doing my pull-up training. No, the workout is the training time. That is when you should be improving these movements, so spend the attention to do it correctly. Once you master this balance between practice and training, you'll start to make a ton of progress really, really fast, but you won't really reach your peak without the next gear. Competition is the final gear, the final mode that you need to use in your training. When I say competition mode, I mean that you are pushing yourself to the absolute limits and you are reaching for new heights. This can be going out and doing an actual competition or an online qualifier, but it doesn't have to be. This can be really pushing the pace on a Metcon. This can be trying to hit a new PR lift. With competition, you're either one of two people, and let me know in the comments which one you are. You're either always trying to compete with your friends in class, you're stepping on the gas, pushing your limits, always, trying to lift really heavy weights and maybe missing a few on the way up. Or you're the type of person that is scared to put more weight on the bar, you're overly cautious, overly pacing everything, and you're kind of like timid with the intensity. If you're type A, then maybe you should dial it back a little bit. Every session doesn't need to be a max out, and you shouldn't be killing yourself and feeling completely wasted after the gym. I have a sign on the door that goes into my gym right over there that says effort over everything. Effort doesn't mean that you killed yourself on the task. It means that you gave your full attention and effort to whatever you were doing. Painting doesn't take a lot of energy, but it does take a lot of effort to do well. Sometimes holding yourself back is the effort that you need to put into for that session. If you're type B, then you need to push your limits a little bit more. The best way to introduce this without the fear of getting yourself hurt is choose one workout per week where you feel very, very confident in the movements. Choose that one workout where you're going to let loose. Don't pace it. Go all out. Go out too hot. Hit a wall and see what happens. A lot of people are so worried about redlining, but they don't know where the red line is, and so they never really reach it. If you don't know where things start to break, then how do you know what 85% of that is? Do the same thing with your lifts. Pick one lift per week that you're really going to push your upper limit on. I tell people for every day that you challenge yourself with load, you should have 2 or 3 days where you challenge yourself with position and technique. Once a week, let it all out, go super hard, push yourself to the limit, and get a new PR. Many people have never pushed themselves hard enough to know where that 85% is. And that means that they're doing most of their training at less than what is required to continue to make progress. Again, if you don't have the technique dialed in for whatever the movement is, then you shouldn't be trying to push the pace in that section of the workout. You should be trying to work on moving correctly. If you need help with your technique so you can push the pace on your workouts a little bit more, join Technique Team. The link is in the description. I'd love to help. So how do you apply this? As a novice, I would say 15% of your time should be spent doing recovery, 35% practice, 40% training, and then only 10% competing. A lot of the reason that the recovery aspect of this is not as much is just because when you are starting out, everything is going to be sore. You need to focus on recovery in general, but it's going to be harder to fine-tune the recovery aspect of it, especially when you're just learning. Same thing with competing. We want you to make sure that you are honing in the movement and not just trying to step on the gas at this point. As you start to get into the more intermediate stage, again, recovery about the same, practice maybe a little bit less, and maybe compete a little bit more, right? Start to push your limits a little bit more. Maybe take 2 workouts a week where you're really kind of like sending it as hard as you can. As you approach advanced, that is when we're going to need to bump up the recovery, right? So now you know how to do the movements. You're at a position where you can kind of make yourself hurt pretty bad, which is okay. But we need to make sure that you are really focused on the nutrition, that you're getting enough sleep, that you're doing your soft tissue work. Once you get to this level, the movements start to get a little bit more high skill. They become more taxing. So we need to make sure that the recovery is dialed in. Still just as much practice, maybe a little bit less focus on training at this point. I think a lot of people get very confident in the way they move, moving up to advanced, and then they get stuck in that advanced RX when things become really higher skill, and that is because they didn't spend the time developing good patterns early. And again, about the same amount of time competing, still need to push yourself. And then in RX, I would say you need less time competing and more time just doing training, right? So your practice time at this point can dwindle back a little bit. You should have a good idea of where your strength and conditioning is in general, and you should be biasing your training in that direction, right? So if you're weaker, maybe I would say spend your extra pieces or your weakness work doing some more strength stuff. If your engine is your issue, maybe do a couple long runs, once or twice a week or something. The actual split of how most CrossFitters use these gears, I would say is more like 5% recovery, 10% practice, 65% training, and probably 20% competing. And doing CrossFit like that, will you get some results? Sure. You might end up banged up, you might end up burnt out, and that's not what I want to see from anyone. So don't just train harder and do more CrossFit workouts. Switch gears based on what you need for that day and in your development as an athlete. But if you're feeling stuck, it's probably one of the 8 constraints that I cover in this next video. Thanks so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.